There was a big deal, $100 million deal that Budweiser did with the UFC. And when I saw this, did you hear about that at all or no?
Budweiser did with the UFC?
Budweiser did $100 million.
I thought it was Budweiser. I thought it was Bud Light.
Bud Light. Yeah, Bud Light.
Because I remember there was some backlash about the deal.
Yeah, so there was a thing. It was like people are threatening to boycott the UFC because of the Bud Light deal.
Right.
And I did a business breakdown, and I'm going to do it again here on the show. But I actually thought it was a genius move. Because for everyone, the watchers that don't know what happened, Bud Light, they essentially got canceled.
Right.
By their audience. In the reverse, they got reverse canceled.
Right.
Because they were trying to be too inclusive. They sponsored
Dylan Mulvaney.
Trans.
Yeah. Dylan Mulvaney.
Trans person.
Yeah, well, right. Fair enough. Or still veiny, if you know what I mean. Yeah.
Whoa, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So since that's the case, they went and they sponsored the 365 Days a Woman of the Year individual, and that ended up leading to the cancellation of the I forget who it was that was pushing Bud Light heavily, and people just started
from a business perspective. Bud Light fucked up because they don't know their core audience. You know your audience is these guys are like rootin' tootin' Americans drinking some Bud Light in the back of my truck. Yeah, that's kind of like their core audience, or like very masculine guys like Bud Light. You know, let me get a Bud Light after work, crack a beer. Just had a long day at my electrician job. Let me crack a beer with a Bud Light, you know? And they sponsored Dylan Mulvaney, put Dylan Mulvaney on the can. And all of a sudden, people were like, fuck Bud Light. They lost $100 million.
Yeah, they lost a shit ton of bread.
They almost went out of business.
So it got that far. Interesting. I didn't know it had gone that far. I knew it was bad. I didn't know it was that bad. Interesting.
And that's just a prime example of not knowing your core audience. So if I'm Bud Light, I'm scrambling. I'm like, let's get all the soldiers together, emergency meeting. Let's figure out how to fix this. So they decided, okay, we sponsored this fucked us over. Let's sponsor the most masculine thing we could figure out. So they started looking into it.
Polar opposite.
Yeah, polar opposite. They're like UFC.
Right.
And Dana White's a brilliant businessman. He looks at this and he's like, oh yeah, they fucked up. He knows he has all the leverage.
Yeah. So you could throw out insane figures.
And he did a $100 million deal.
Incredible.
So Bud Light's like, well, fuck. They want $100 million, but they put us in the middle of a UFC cage. Fuck it. We got it. At this point, they're desperate. They know they have to do it. They're gonna run. They're running the fence. So they're like, fuck it, do it. Dana White's like $100 million. And like I said, Dana White, because he knew the leverage, people are like, I'm gonna cancel the UFC because they're taking money from Bud Light. No, the fuck you're not. I don't care what anybody says. If there's a big UFC fight, I don't care who sponsors that shit. I'm gonna watch it.
Because the core audience of people who tune in for UFC, you're a fan of the fight business. A lot of times you don't. The casual viewer will tune in for that high-profile fight, and even if somebody said, you wanted to go and cancel the UFC, you can't do it because they've consistently been able to ascend since the pandemic. Because really, 2020, they were one of the two, sporting events. Them and the WWE kept going. They kept going, and it's gotten to its absolute peak. So even though Bud Light is in that terrible, tailspin, them going and partnering with the UFC, Dana White being able to pull all the money. Right, that's the one brand that can save them. So they're going to be able to print, and people are still going to go and tune in.
Because what happens now, it's like, think about all the people that watch the UFC. Now Bud Light's back in the forefront of their mind. They could be like, fuck Bud Light, whatever. But they see Bud Light. Every time they tune into a UFC fight, eventually they'll be like, man, I want a Bud Light right now.
Yeah, soon enough, somebody will go and they'll bite on it. They'll bite on it. It makes me wonder what the turnaround time for that investment will be. Now granted, everything takes time with the sponsor, but it makes me wonder. It really makes me wonder.
I don't think it's necessarily even one of those things where you can calculate a direct ROI. It's more one of those things where it's like, hey, we fucked up.
Right.
Let's just cough up this 100 M's, fix our image. It's not going to be overnight. But like I said, when Bud Light's in the forefront and they start seeing people get fucked up and beat up and punched while looking at a Bud Light thing, they start to associate that with like masculinity again. And it's a slow grind to like, hey, we fucked up, but let's
because it was a fast fall. It was a very fast fall. So it really makes me wonder. And, right now with the UFC, things are going magnificent with what you saw in the ring between Francis Ngannou when he took on Tyson Fury in a fight that truly could have gone either way. But I don't think if they raised Ngannou's hand and he won, I don't think there'd be a lot of people who would be complaining.